This is a sarcophagus created by, or provided by the wife of a man who ultimately became the superintendent of the gladiator barracks, presumably of the Colosseum. Probably a fairly important position, at least among the bureaucratic level. How much such a thing would cost, whether it was done by slave artisans, I don't know. Several of these statues are by men who wanted to make it clear in their death, in their afterlife for those of us who remain, that they were free-born Roman citizens. Apparently all of these funerary devices are for people who were in the military, who would serve in various campaigns. Their ultimate goal was to rise to the class level of knight. Being from the United States, it's very difficult for us to, again, wrap our brains around the sensitivity to status. Although that may be more prevalent in the minds of some blacks 100 years ago, and perhaps some Latinos today. But I'm not sure that there's any way that they would concern themselves with it expressing it in such a hard stone manner. Some of the tools, like compasses and so forth, used by the engraver to lay out and then ultimately carve these epigrams. More tools, and apparently writing that was not epigraphic, in other words, I guess not intended to be quote-unquote important, was done in a kind of a slanting, italicized way, kind of the way we write today. It suggested that this bit of writing was simply practice for students. So apparently it was found either in a school of epigraphy or something similar to it. I'm standing now inside of part of the Baths of Diocletian, built in 200 to 300 AD. They were capable of accommodating 3,000 people at one time. They had a cold water, a hot water, and a tepid water baths. Here, just another portion of it. It was a huge, huge complex. In addition to the parts that I'm showing you now, there's an entire cathedral that was made out of part of it. It's interesting to look at the relief sculpture. Look at this woman's arm. And this man over here, his hand and whatever it is that he's holding. Don't know exactly what this is, but presumably it's original. I'm guessing it's a crypt of some sort. It's interesting that these things could be carved out of a solid chunk of rock. It looks like someone retrofitted it for a sink. (1580) reconstruction drawing, 1750 drawing. I came from way over there where you see people walking to here, and I'll continue around to the left We're still looking at this huge complex, the Baths of Diocletian. This is the Basilica Santa Maria degli Angeli e dei Martiri, or something like that. And this is still another part of the Baths of Diocletian. I asked the Padre if it was okay to video. He said yes. When Michelangelo designed this reuse of the baths, if you will, he had designed, I think, this end as the apse of the east end of the nave. But in later times, to accommodate more people, they expanded the church and rotated it 90 degrees. So his nave became the transept, and this is the new apse. Some kind of commemoration here today because they're putting all kinds of flowers in place. Some gathering of importance is about to take place. It has what look like fire people, certainly emergency workers of some sort, and lots of flowers. Here's an interesting scooter because it has a motorcycle because it has two front wheels. And this is Constantine's Basilica from the outside on the street. I'm going down to the museums at the Capitolina, or whatever it's called, right near Victor Emmanuel Monument. I think it's the first, maybe the second day in which there's some sun. It's interesting, at the time of Trajan, that Trajan column could only be seen from the far side. It was surrounded by buildings, and you could actually, though, go up into different levels of buildings and roam around and actually read the stories depicted there. One interesting little anecdote, a taxi driver right there stopped to let me cross the street. And it's one of the things that I've noticed here, and it's an interesting dynamic considering that taxi cab drivers all over the world have a reputation of kamikaze pilots on heavy drugs.